Blog Talk Radio.
We'll never see you again.
I dearly hope so, my prince. There is so much more I meant to tell you. Everything you know is about to change.
American Daily Review.
Well, I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers. Not too long ago, two friends of mine were talking to a Cuban refugee, a businessman who had escaped from Castro. And in the midst of his story, one of my friends turned to the other and said, "We don't know how lucky we are." And the Cuban stopped and said, "How lucky you are. I had some place to escape to." And in that sentence, he told us the entire story. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. And this idea that government is beholden to the people, that it has no other source of power except the sovereign people, is still the newest and the most unique idea in all the long history of man's relation to man. This is the issue of this election. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves. Where then is the road to peace? Well, it's a simple answer after all. You and I have the courage to say to our enemies, there is a price we will not pay, there is a point beyond which they must not advance.
When America needed them most, two men rose to the occasion. Doug Gibbs of Constitution Radio and PoliticalPistachio.com. Jasmius of PoliticalPistachio.com, Constitution Radio, and the Hard Starboard Radio Network. This is American Daily Review on blogtalkradio.com. No, Jasmius.
Yes, a new entrance theme for yours truly, although consider that a rough draft. The audio quality is not up to par, I can easily tell, and I will improve that. I'll have a new and improved version on Monday on the Hard Starboard Radio Network, 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific. And then going forward, including here on American Daily Review at blogtalkradio.com/American Daily Review. I am, of course, one of your co-hosts for the next 3 hours here on blogtalkradio.com/American Daily Review. And then, of course, in the third hour, or on KMET1490AM.com, for the flagship program of the Saturday Afternoon Extravaganza. Of course, I'm referring to Constitution Radio with Douglas V. Gibbs. Here, the guest call-in number 646-595-4520. My email address, jasmius@comcast.net. The chat room is open and filling up at an alarming rate. Now, and in case anyone was wondering, playing the rendition of Amazing Grace by the Air Force band, United States Air Force, band, not a choir, it's a band. That is in remembrance and observance of Mother's Day tomorrow, and the fact that my mother passed away, over 3.5 years ago. So whenever it comes around to Mother's Day, and my late, dearly departed, but we'll see again, Mom, on her birthday, I always play Amazing Grace. Love you, Mom. We'll see you one day again. And given the way events continue to head and the times in which we live, which were foretold by the ancient Hebrew prophets several thousand years ago, that time may be coming sooner than we think.
I am with Douglas V. Gibbs, and I see a whole army of my countrymen here in defiance of tyranny. You've come to fight as free men. And free men you are. What will you do with that freedom? Will you fight? Aye. Fight and you may die. Run and you'll live. At least a while. And dying in your bed many years from now, would you be willing to trade all the days from this day to that for one chance, just one chance, to come back here and tell our enemies that they may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom?
In every revolution, there's one man with a vision.
Perhaps today is a good day.
Douglas V. Gibbs.
He's the one.
What real power is? Douglas V. Gibbs.
Thank you very much. I'm in the studio up there in Banning, Beaumont, Cherry Valley. And,
Wow. You know what? I would be willing to bet that at this very moment you are surrounded by heavily padded partitions.
Yes, I am. As a matter of fact, I think it sounds a lot better in here, so I think we're going to have less problems than we had before on the other program. Also, I had a chance to talk to Pamela Geller yesterday. She
Really?
will not be on the program. Yeah, she will not be on the program today, but she may be on next week. But I did get, and by the way, also another good friend of mine, Evan Sayet's under fire because he. Did you see that? Did you see what Evan Sayet had to say about Garland? Yeah, he said his favorite drawings. He said his favorite drawings there in Garland were the chalk drawings on the sidewalk. But
outstanding. Outstanding.
I'm going to shoot him a message during this show through the computer and ask him if he wants to call in about that. But I did get a hold of Melissa Barnhart. Melissa Barnhart is a editor for the Christian Post, the largest Christian website in the country, or in the world actually, and she lives in Garland, Texas.
Nice.
So yeah, and you know, I said I really don't want to have guests until we went 2 hours, but this is someone I want to have on for 5 or 10 minutes. Bring her on, talk about, because she was right there. Now she wasn't at the event, but because she was local, it's kind of like me with listening to local media as something happens here. She was right there, bird's eye view, and also because she's an editor, every single story that went into the Christian Post about what happened in Garland, she had to edit, and trust me, she was getting all kinds of information. So, and also she's one of the sharpest people I know. So we're going to have her on today for about 5 or 10 minutes, about 12 after the hour. So I'm looking forward to a very good Constitution Radio with Douglas V. Gibbs on KMET 1490 AM today, and I'm looking forward to a very good American Daily Review. I'm sitting here eating a cinnamon roll that my good friend Glenn out here in Beaumont decided to have available for me because he, I don't know if he knew this, but you know me, I usually don't get a chance to eat because I'm so busy, and then I'm, ordering food while you're, salivating on the other end of the line. But
yeah, I definitely can relate to that. So, in fact, I had a couple of bagels about an hour ago, so I'm ready to go, and a cupcake.
Yeah, so you're ready to roll. You're good. I do want to say a couple more things. I want to say a couple more things about the studio real quick. Since last Saturday, in order to make the studio better, there's not only partitions up and things to do to deaden the sound, and we'll probably even improve it more as we move forward. But by putting up the partitions, the computer, which we were using for the video and all that, is now facing away from us on the other side of the partitions for whoever's handling the engineers panel. Therefore, what to do? So Glenn found a monitor to face us so we can look at your ugly mug during the show. And trust me, I'm uglier, so I'm allowed to say that. And it's essentially that's why you grew a beard. Yeah, we both have faces for radio. It's a mirror of the other screen. So whatever he sees on his screen, I see on my screen. And then there's also a webcam added to this other monitor that has the ability to zoom in, zoom out, move right, move left, all that other jazz. So it's almost like we're becoming the real thing here. He says, well, as we get bigger and better and do this, and I said, well, compared to the average yokel out there, we're way ahead of them as it is. So.
Oh yeah, I mean, as far as talent and experience, yeah.
Well, we already knew that. We already knew
there.
That.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, not looks, but talent and experience.
Yeah.
And
okay, so now.
And so forth.
Here's what happens, listeners. We have the big stories of the week, and we split them between American Daily Review and Constitution Radio with Douglas V. Gibbs on KMET. And so we talked about the important ones during this show, and then the super important ones on Constitution Radio. We have a 3-hour show. It's just split between 2 hours here on American Daily Review and 1 hour on Constitution Radio with Douglas V. Gibbs on KMET. And so this is what we're going to do today is we, right here on American Daily Review, is we've got, what do we got, like 9 stories I think we were going to cover here. And then
14 through 6, so that'll be 9 stories, yeah.
Yeah, and Constitution Corner is a part of it. And folks, let me, I want you to understand something. Here at American Daily Review, the FCC doesn't tether us. We are untethered. We are. Is that the right way? Is that how you say it? Is that the right way to say it? We're untethered.
Unfettered, unrestricted, or in the words of Ultron, there are no strings on us.
Yeah, and so we do get a little more provocative on ADR sometimes. So don't get me wrong. Trust me, I have no problems being provocative.
We don't
program. We just have FCC rules to make sure we don't step over.
Yeah, we don't take any shit on American Daily Review, but and we don't take any crap on Constitution Radio, so it works out just fine.
There we go. That's a great way of putting it. All right, Constitution. That's because you are who you are. You are the man. I would trust no other radio host by my side on this show or Constitution Radio other than Jazz Miss, and then on Constitution Radio we'll throw in Alex because I'm surrounded by great people, and that's a part of the. I feel like Henry Ford. I told you about Henry Ford. Once he was asked, what made you so successful? And he said, well, I'm surrounded by people that know more than me, and I did what they told me. I kind of feel that way on a lot of this stuff.
Well, it's true. I mean, the first, one of the chief skills of leadership is the ability to delegate, find good people, and push the work off onto them. So,
yeah, something like that. Now, what I wanted to start with was something that I actually discussed in the Constitution class, and I felt it was an important topic to cover because the language in Article 2 is very fascinating. Let's put it that way. And when I'm talking about the United States Constitution, folks, the United States Constitution is. I know that other countries sometimes have constitutions, and there's a lot of them that don't have constitutions. And I've been told by people, say, Doug, we should, because we have this great constitution, we should be, teaching others about other countries, giving, helping them write their constitution. And Jay Leno had a perfect line for that. He said, well, we should, we're asking about writing, helping write constitutions for other countries. We should, just give them ours. Not only was it written by a bunch of very smart men, but turns out we're not really using it much anyway right now anyway. So,
it's like they say, the best humor has a kernel of truth at its core. So, that otherwise it wouldn't really be much of a joke.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so Article 2 begins that the hey, that's nice. Let's turn off the audio on my computer so it doesn't interrupt me like that. All right, so it actually doesn't begin this way. But here's the way it begins. The executive power shall be vested in the President of the United States. So the President has the executive power. Congress has the legislative power. Judiciary has the judicial power. President has the executive power. Then we move over to the execution of his office, the oath that he swears by for the execution of his office. Here's what it says. I do solemnly swear or affirm that I will faithfully execute the office of the President of the United States. Faithfully execute the office of the President of the United States. Then when you go over to Article 2, Section 3, it says this. He shall take care that the laws be faithfully executed. That's a whole lot of faithfully.
Yeah, you'd think that they were trying to emphasize a point.
Well, now let's think about this. Now, what does faithfully mean? And that goes back to faithful. And I know there's definitely a religious connotation there, and there is by design. But I'm trying to do things with the computer, speak, shuffle papers. I'm I'm such a multitasker sometimes. But anyway.
Or schizophrenic, one of the two. So.
Schizophrenic, yeah, we could call it that. But anyway, okay. So what is to be faithful? If you are to be faithful, what does that mean? What do you think?
Well, it means that you are loyal to the designated idea, and you can be trusted to carry it out.
There you go. And not only that, but you believe in the cause, maybe. You understand the intricacies of it, and in other words, you have full belief that it's a good system. That all comes into play.
Yeah, as the Seahawk motto goes, all in, fully committed.
All in, fully committed. All right, so he's supposed to faithfully execute, but also he's supposed to faithfully take care that the laws be faithful, that the laws be faithfully executed. They must be faithfully executed, all laws. Now, here's something that's fascinating as we talk about this. Remember what I said a moment ago about the legislative branch having all legislative powers. So his job is not to decide whether or not he likes those laws and then pick and choose which ones to enforce or execute. That's not his job. Now, that doesn't mean that he shouldn't consider the Constitution when it comes to the laws of the United States. And if he has an opinion, he can say, hey, I don't know about this, and go back to Congress or whatever. And when it comes to the veto, if you look back in history, when it came to presidents vetoing bills, more often than not, their first consideration was the Constitution. Is this constitutional? In 1817, James Madison vetoed the Public Works Bill, or some calls it the bonus bill, because it was unconstitutional. And he said in his veto that he wrote, hey, sounds like a good idea, but I don't find any authorities for the federal government, so I'm going to veto this. So this is not to say that the president should have no consideration when it comes to constitutionality of a law, especially when it comes to whether or not he should sign it. However, once that law is in place, it's not his position to decide because it's unconstitutional or because it disagrees with his narrative or his agenda that he just won't enforce it. The law in the book, the law in the book. So when someone's faithful in that way, they have they have to make sure that they are following the law. They have a firm adherence to the rule of law. The rule of law is the law is in place and it's his job to execute it. If there's something wrong with the law, then the people can put people in to repeal it, or Congress should, or so on and so forth. And for that faithfulness to be in place, it must be in place for his entire term. He must be firmly adherent to duty, loyal to the rule of law, true to his allegiance, and for these actions to be formed as a faithful subject. Faithful is one that is to be faithful is one that is constant in the performance of his duties and his services, exact in attending to commands, and true to one's word. So that describes our president, right?
Well, I mean, it kind of does, just not in relation to the United States Constitution.
Yeah. Well, it's like people say, okay, so this president's a failure, not in his mind.
I mean, in the performance of his duties and services, exact in attending to his executive imperial decrees, true to whatever word comes out of his mouth, but not true to the United States Constitution. He round-filed that 6.5 years ago.
Now, this is what this is when we talk about this president, in other words, he believes he's above that rule of law. He shouldn't have to follow that. He's above it.
Yeah, he's the Judge Dredd of real life.
Well, that is something that comes, what comes to mind is a ruling elite. And when people talk about the word elite, I love it when the left try to define what they think elite means. And, they think elite's just people have lots of money and whatever. Well, that may or may not be so, but what we mean by the ruling elite are people who believe they are above everyone else, that they are a part of a hierarchy, and that they are rulers over the people. And it doesn't stop with someone like President Obama. No, not at all. Matter of fact, I'm sure you saw it. It could go all the way down to city council members. Did you see it? Did you notice what I put on the website about my good friend Murrieta Councilman Rick Gibbs?
Oh yeah. That I tell you, one of my favorite expressions to describe the left or in the left-wing elites is any port in a storm. Anything that works in their favor, they will do. Anything that works, that's the one commandment of liberalism. Thou shalt not do anything that impedes the agenda and the narrative. And so it doesn't surprise me at all to see in Murrieta City Councilman Rick Gibbs, who I'm going to go way out on a limb and say he's probably pro-gun control, urge a witness who was at a city council meeting to put a gun in your mouth, quote unquote.
Yeah, the fascinating thing about Rick Gibbs is he calls himself a Republican, but nothing he says or does is, conservative at all. He is a lot of people believe that even the city manager jumps and bows at Rick Gibbs's beckoning call. Now, Plato, you've heard of Plato, right, folks? Plato, Aristotle. Plato believed that there should be a ruling elite, and it should be a bunch of philosophers. Could you imagine? Aristotle disagreed, thank God. Aristotle, some people believe, is the father of conservatism. But anyway, this ruling elite idea, when it comes to being in power and ruling, it all comes down to two things: money and power. Money and power, money and power. And their excuses are usually tied into money and the common good. What was going on is this was a discussion over something called WRCOG, which is the Western Riverside Council of Governments, and they are knee-deep into something called Agenda 21, or Sustainable Development. What's going on in Murrieta and a lot of these cities out here and really around the country is that through the environmentalist excuses of, we've got to, save the planet and save the wildlife and, make sure this poor little bird, doesn't get disturbed and all sort of stuff, they are snatching up private property without just compensation. And now they are signing on to do something that will basically allow Murrieta more money so they can make sure they can do this properly, so that they can, pay the people who are snatching the land from at least something, not just compensation, but something. And when there was people who stood against this, opposed this, Councilman Gibbs said, hey, we've got a contract here. Besides, let's bring in more money to the city. And, we want to make sure that the habitat's protected and they're sustainable. You do want everything to be sustainable, don't you? Says, if we don't do this, why, you might as well, are you ready? Put a gun in your mouth and hope nothing is in the chamber.
Russian roulette.
Well, that's...
is, I think, the metaphor he was going for.
Yeah,
metaphorically, of course.
Is that the kind of thing that our quote-unquote leaders should be saying?
Well, if he was really a Republican, he probably wouldn't have said it. That's the kind of thing that somebody, a local elite who is entrenched, who is safe in his position of local power and influence, can say and get away with because he's insulated from the voting public. The voting public is the voting public.
It's not like the worldwide media would ever find out about him saying that anyway, right?
Well, again, if he were really a Republican, yeah, they would. But since that's a ceremonial label for Councilman Gibbs at best, then no, they won't. He's pretty, actually, I had one more thing to say along those lines, but I forgot what it was by now.
Well, well, the thing is about him is, his attitude was probably, first of all, I'm above the law, so what can anybody do about it? Second of all, even if someone put on the internet, what do I care? No one reads the internet. It's just a fad. All right, now.
Yeah, well, it's an awfully long-running fad, apparently, but...
yeah, that's what I hear, yeah.
Yeah.
Hey,
those rumors get around.
Now, you put a story on Political Pistachio. This fascinates me. It's like, what's that called? Affirmative action. It's like affirmative action gone wild in another direction. Folks, you know what affirmative action is? That's when, special privileges are given to minority groups in order for them to be able to succeed at something because, they must be too stupid or something. That's what it's basically telling them. But for some reason, they love having this. I've never understood that. If I was a member of those groups, it would be an insult to me. But anyway, this person, this should be an insult to her. The fire department, New York Fire Department, a woman who didn't pass all the tests, but she's going to get to pass anyway because, it was just too, rigorous for her poor little body and the muscle. Well, wait a second. So what happens in the emergency when she needs to be able to function with all of that gear on her and she's not capable of doing it because she got hired even though she didn't pass this rigorous physical test, right? What is something wrong? Oh, that's right, Jasmius. Agenda and narrative matters more.
Agenda and narrative. The woman in question is named Rebecca Wax, age 33, and she graduated this past Tuesday from the Fire Academy of New York without passing the functional skills training test. A grueling obstacle course of job-related tasks performed in full gear with a limited air supply. And what's going to happen? See, this was she was passed through anyway at the insistence of Sandinista Mayor of New York City, Bill de Blasio, and because they want more women in firefighter positions, regardless of qualification. Now, that's not to say that no woman can possibly pass the functional skills training test. There are women. There are a number of women who have done so and are full-fledged New York City firefighters. And you know what? God bless them. They qualified. They can do the job, and go get it. Go get them. But Rebecca Wax can't. She failed the test, and so what's going to happen is that once she gets out, she's assigned to a firehouse, and her firehouse gets a call on a structure fire. She goes out with the rest of on the engine with the rest of her fellow firefighters. She is going to get, who knows, herself, her fellow firefighters, and endangered civilians killed because she can't meet the physical requirements of the job. Because Bill de Blasio insists that there need to be more firefighters with the X chromosomes, just for appearance's sake. It's all about affirmative action. It's all about appearances. It's all about bean counting. It has nothing to do with the actual job of fighting fires. And there are some jobs where it's not a life. I mean, affirmative action should not exist. Every job should be a meritocracy. But there are some jobs where, while that's true, there aren't necessarily life and death circumstances that go with it. Firefighting is any first responder job is a job that does have life or death consequences, and that's why this, you would think that first responder positions might be exempt from affirmative action dictates, but nope, not in New York City.
Sorry about that. I was typing and listening at the same time. Well, the thing is, it comes down to the narrative. The narrative is never about what's best for the country. It's not about what's best for the city or what's best for safety. Although they'll say that on the top, and they'll say, what's best for the community or whatever. That's what they'll tell you. But that's never, ever their primary goal. It's all about agenda. It's all about narrative. That's what it's about.
Well,
every time.
Well, here's some comments from some of her female some of Rebecca Wax's fellow female firefighters. Quote: while Wax fell short, two other female probies, and I guess that's the same thing as students or cadets or whatever, in the graduating class passed the fundamental skills training test with flying colors. They're kicking butt. They're doing better than 50% of the class, according to one insider. When they get assigned to a firehouse, they'll be welcomed with open arms because guess what, folks? They've done what everyone else has gone through. Now, other female firefighters weren't pleased about Wax's treatment either. A lot of the girls in the field are pissed because they feel like they're getting lumped into the same category of a female getting special treatment and not meeting the same standards as the males. It devalues what the women in the field have accomplished. In other words, like I said, there are women who have passed this test, are full-fledged firefighters, fully qualified, and now, they're lumped into the same poor Penelope Pitstop category with Rebecca Wax. They're not endangering anybody's lives and their fellow firefighters' lives, but Rebecca Wax is going to be, and I guarantee you, Rebecca Wax is not the last one that's going to be coming into the fire department of New York. And, it makes me wonder, picture this scenario. If Miss Wax is herself killed on the job because of her physical unfitness for firefighting, how much do you want to bet that the New York City Fire Department will be vilified for it by that same de Blasio administration?
Oh, exactly.
I think it's quite likely.
Well, we're going to see lawsuits, and there won't be riots because she's, white.
Oh, she's white. She's definitely white. Soft, white, and female.
Soft, white, and female, and unable to pass the rigorous test, but given a pass because of the agenda, because of the narrative, because we must turn everything upside down, inside out, and backwards.
Well,
Story number 11.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. I was just going to say it's turning reality on its head.
Yeah, absolutely.
But of course, they're the reality-based community.
Now, by the way, I just now got confirmation. This is what I was typing earlier. Evan Sayet, the comedian who put out that tweet I told you about, he's going to call in about 20. He's going to call in about 20 after.
Ah.
so we have
Nice.
the editor from Christian Post, Melissa Barnhart, who lives in Garland, Texas, at 10 after, and then at 20 after, Evan Sayet, the comedian who's under fire for his little tweet, which I just loved it. Matter of fact, I gotta answer him 10.
Oh, yeah. You know, anybody.
So of the three I wanted to get, the only one I couldn't get today was Pam Geller.
Yeah,
but
anybody.
She said that she's going to try next Saturday.
Well, she merits a full segment all by herself. But you know, anybody who has understood what Pamela Geller was trying and continues to try to do, to illustrate the point about Islamic jihadism and intolerance and how the American left has become the militant dini arm of the global jihad, is getting getting a bunch of heat, getting vilified, getting criticized. In fact, there were a lot of people. In fact, there was a debate on, well, not to jump ahead in the story queue, but there was a debate on within Fox News, because you had Greta Van Susteren and Bill O'Reilly who were saying, well, yeah, Pamela Geller did have the First Amendment right to do what she did, but she shouldn't have done it. It was abusing her First Amendment right. That's what Kathleen Parker wrote in her most recent syndicated column. And then did you hear and see what Megyn Kelly had to say about it in response? It was epic. I mean, she why do so few people either get or have the courage to publicly admit, publicly state that they get what Pamela Geller is trying to do? I mean, that's why I talked about at politicalpistachio.com this week. I talked about the death of the First Amendment. I mean, if there are that few people that are willing to defend it and that many people that are willing to attack it on behalf of a bloodthirsty enemy, then I mean, it's like Megyn Kelly said, then the terrorists are at the very least are winning. But what's that drip?
What's what drip?
I'm hearing a drip sound effect.
Whoop, like that?
Yeah.
That's when I put you on and off mute, and then you must be hearing it.
Oh, that's what that is.
As you're talking, I'm listening, and I'm also talking to Glenn because we're making sure I understand all the equipment in here and all that. Because he's not going to be here; he's got an appointment. That's why I got here early.
Oh, okay, all right. Well, then I guess for the remaining hour and 15 minutes of American Daily Review, one or the other of us will be taking a leak.
You want to go back and record that for the future too, so you can maybe use it as a sound effect. Every time Hillary has a thought.
That's not quite the one I would use for that. In fact, I don't know if I have that. No, in fact, I'm sure I don't. But the Godzilla sound effect. That's what I always use for Hillary.
So you don't use something that's somebody defecating then?
No. That's we have standards on the Hard Starboard Radio Network. So, no, we don't stoop that low.
No, I could tell by the faux ads. Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. They're just things we will not do. But speaking of Hillary Clinton. Now this is a link to a post that was tangentially about Hillary Clinton because any story about, well, Hillary Clinton's a hypocrite. Well, Hillary Clinton's an elitist. Well, Hillary Clinton's above the law. I mean, that's like, to me, that's like writing about the sky being blue, water being wet,
Right.
Dog bites man, airliner lands safely.
You know what I
at
think I'm
airport.
going to do? I just got to thinking. You know what I'm going to do when it's time to test this equipment? I'm going to Skype into American Daily Review.
Okay, just let me know when you're about to do so.
Yeah, well, we'll do that in about half an hour or so, or 45 minutes, and we'll Skype in, make sure all this equipment's working, and I sound loud and clear to you, because if I sound loud and clear to you, that means everything's right, and KMT will hear me no problem.
Yeah, kind of like a live dry run with
that
accompanying.
That would be a wet dry run then, wouldn't it be?
With an accompanying bloop.
Bloop.
Yeah, like that. That's perfect right there. You can't get any better of a descriptive motif than that. Now this post about Hillary, like I say, it was tangentially about Hillary Clinton. In fact, what's the title?
Well, Trey Gowdy's name was in the title, but
the lawlessness of Hillary Clinton. Which how many days do we have? Because that's how long it would take to fully discuss that topic. But and I wasn't taking a shot at Trey Gowdy when I said the irrelevance of Trey Gowdy. It's not his fault.
Yeah, although a lot of people took it that way on Facebook.
Well, I mean, we all love Trey Gowdy on the right.
Sure.
I mean, he's a classic. He's a classic Palmetto. He's from South Carolina, so he's a classic Palmetto State fire eater. You know, and by the way, for those of you who see the titles of my posts and they come across on Doug's Facebook page, read the post before you jump to conclusions about it. You know, I don't think that Trey Gowdy is irrelevant because of his own actions. I mean, like I say, Trey Gowdy is tremendous, a fiery, patriotic, constitutionalist firebrand who doesn't play patty cake with the other side but tells it like it is and lets them have it with both barrels on a single basis. What makes him functionally irrelevant are two things. Number one, he's a Republican, and so he's part of the Republican Party. And two, Republicans have no power to wield in any case, despite having large majorities in both houses of Congress, because Barack Obama has gutted the legislative branch of the federal government of any clout it ever had. And now that was the context in which I reported on Hillary Clinton dismissing, most likely, or in fact she is at least partially dismissing the summons, the subpoena that the chairman of the House Select Committee on Benghazi issued her to show up and testify regarding Benghazi and her safely deleted emails. This is the quote from thehill.com. Hillary Clinton is refusing to testify twice before the House panel investigating the 2012 attacks on the U.S. government compound in Benghazi, Libya. Hillary is willing to testify once before the House Select Committee in Benghazi, but her attorney says, that's David Kendall. That's the same David Kendall from 20-plus years ago. These people never go away, folks. They're like vampires. He says that she will not meet the panel's demand to come before it twice. He has also, David Kendall that is, criticized the panel for asking Hillary to appear once just to examine her use of a private email account while Secretary of State. Respectfully, there is no basis, logic, or precedent for such an unusual request, David Kendall said Monday in a letter to Representative Trey Gowdy, the Select Committee's chairman. Well, I don't recall any instance in which you can pick and choose reasons for ordering a subpoena, and if you decide you don't like their reasons and there's no basis, logic, or precedent for it, that you can just blow it off. I thought a subpoena was a subpoena. I mean, you know that scene in at the beginning of Iron Man 2 where that hot babe is waiting out by his car at the Stark Expo, and he and Happy, his bodyguard, get in the car, and then she serves a subpoena on him, and he says, "Oh, I want to see the badge." Yeah, he likes to see the badge, and she shows him the badge. And then what happened the next day? Well, Tony Stark testified before the Senate Armed Services Committee. So, I mean, since when are subpoenas optional? Well, since she's Hillary Clinton, apparently. Although Kendall did say that the secretary, she hasn't been the secretary in over 2.5 years, but the secretary is fully prepared to stay for the duration of the committee's questions on the day she appears. So it's a one-shot deal. And of course, the document is a response to a summons Gowdy made last month. So they took their own sweet time honoring it, and they're saying, well, she can come by for one day for a little bit, and if you want more than that, well, so and that's kind of, like I say, that's the context in which I refer to the irrelevance of Trey Gowdy. It's not a knock on Trey Gowdy. That's just, there's only so much he can do given the situation, the circumstances, and the party that surrounds him. Plus, when she shows up, whatever day that is, does anybody have any belief, any confidence that she's going to do anything else than she did the last time she testified about Benghazi before Congress? Anybody think that they're going to get the truth out of her?
Well, of course not.
I mean, that's what I mean by irrelevance. It's not a knock on Trey Gowdy. She's Hillary Clinton, so she's one of a high-ranking member of the elite. She considers herself above the law, and she's been above the law for 23 years. So why would this be any different?
Why would it be any different?
Yeah, well, and if Trey Gowdy can't break through that barrier, then that kind of illustrates.
Awesome. So when you say the irrelevance of Trey Gowdy, you're pretty much saying the irrelevance of anybody who dares to stand against her.
Well, and
because if he can't, nobody can.
Well, in practical terms, I mean, I'll just throw it out there. What to our audience? What do you think is going to be gained? I'm not saying that Chairman Gowdy shouldn't subpoena her. I'm not saying he shouldn't call Hillary Clinton to testify before the House Select Committee in Benghazi and every relevant member of the Obama administration. I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just saying, what do you think? What ground is going to be gained? What are we going to learn that is going to actually get us closer to where justice is done on Benghazi or any other Obama administration scandal? That's a commentary on the voting choices of 62 million idiots 2.5 years ago. This is the point to which we have sunk, to which the old American Republic has deteriorated in the year 2015. How do we get back?
How do we? There's only one way, and that's by returning to the principles that were originally set, originally given to us, originally designed for this country. The principles that this nation has succeeded under, has prospered under, and has become the greatest nation in the world under. You have a broken engine. How do you fix it? You get a mechanic. But the problem is, nobody's willing to read the instruction manual on how to do the work.
It also illustrates that change is going to have to come from the grassroots. It's going to have to come from we the people, and it's going to have to just trickle up in terms of direct action, educating people on the Constitution, like, of course, you are doing, indefatigably, and in our voting choices and local elections and state elections and federal elections. I mean, if we had trust me, folks, believe me when I say if we had an entire House of Representatives and an entire Senate full of Trey Gowdy clones, things would be a great deal different.
No, absolutely. But the thing is, we have a Congress that's fearful.
Yes. Yeah, that is the Grand Bull Moose Gold Medal winner of understatements.
Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to go off the air for a moment. We are going to Skype into the program with both me and Alex to test the equipment. He just walked in. So you go on to the next story and just watch for Skype. We're going to try to Skype in and see how it works out with both of us at the mic with our headphones and all that. And if it works for you, it'll work for KMET.
All right. Let's see. That's a good opportune time for a little piece of bumper music.
It is the top of the hour, right?
Yeah, well, it's almost the top of the hour, but okay, if you insist. Let's take the top of the hour break right now. Here on American Daily Review, the Saturday afternoon extravaganza, and we will be back right after this.
Hey kids, there's a wacky new cartoon show just for you. Saturday mornings at 10, it's The Boogers.
Hey, Benny, what are you doing?
Just hanging out.
Well, that's a booger for you. Yes, you'll meet Benny Booger. Benny Booger, Nasal the Maid, and their drippy old antihistamine. It's a nose full of fun, so don't blow it. Pick the one that all the critics have their finger on. It's The Boogers, the show you'll want to wipe under your chair.
I just don't understand why my son can't read.
These days, it's getting harder and harder for teachers to reach some children.
All he does is sit and listen to rap music.
So in keeping with the times, Big Pimp Mac Daddy Books presents Dr. Seuss's Books from the Hood.
One bitch, two bitch, dead bitch, blue bitch.
All the classics translated into a more understandable composition, with titles such as The Cat in the Backwards Baseball Hat, Horton Here's a Hoe, and How the Bitch Stole Christmas.
I will not diss green eggs, old man. I will not diss them, Sam I am.
Dr. Seuss's Books from the Hood.
Well, son, which would you like to read next? Rocket in My Pocket or Hop on Mom?
Call 1 Fox in Detox today.
This line is for ticket holders only, please. Ticket holders only.
Move it. Look out. Hey, I'm cutting in front here.
Wait a minute.
Coming through.
You can't do that.
Yeah, who do you think you are?
Yeah.
Me?
Yeah.
I'm an obnoxious butthead.
Oh, he's a butthead. Oh, sorry.
Yes, you know them well. In fact, you encounter them every day.
Hey, you just parked in front of my driveway. What are you, a butthead? Yeah. Oh. Sorry, I'll just back out over my lawn.
We call them buttheads, but they're actually the unfortunate victims of cranial rectosis, a condition which causes people to lose all feeling for others simply because their head is jammed up their... Well, you get the picture.
Excuse me, but this is a no-smoking section.
So, what are you gonna do about it, cupcake?
Don't do anything. He's a terminal butthead. A public service reminder from the Committee to Replace Lab Animals with Buttheads.
Howdy! Hi, I'm Spike, and you know, when I'm driving down Route 9W on a hot summer day, me and the missus always stop at Dickens Fruit Stand. They've got everything from fruit to vegetables, homemade pies, but there is nothing like their cider. Ain't that right, honey?
Uh-huh.
Dickens cider. Yes, sirree. Why, even though we were late for church last Sunday, she had to have a little Dickens cider.
Uh-huh.
She says there ain't nothing like it. Even my minister says his wife enjoys a little Dickens cider now and then. Hey, why don't you bring some home in our protective plastic rib bottle? That way it'll stay fresh. Or you can let it sit a while and have some hard Dickens cider. It's good at lunch, good at dinner, and there's nothing like waking up with a Dickens cider. Dickens Fruit Stand. just off Route 9W and Country Road 69. Open 24 hours, because after a chilly summer night, I like to snuggle up in bed with a hot, thick insider.
This week, it's Classics Week on Dub Theater. Monday night at 9, it's Rocky in French.
Yo, Adrian, voulez-vous causer avec moi, or what?
Tuesday night, Clint Eastwood is Dirty Harry in Polish.
Sidu Babu 44 Magnumski, Sloski Hetski, Klinowski.
Wednesday, Katharine Hepburn stars in the Academy Award-winning On Golden Pond in Japanese.
Domo arigato, Norman. You old superstar.
Thursday night, thrill to the original Star Wars in Canadian.
Luke, feel the force, eh?
Luke, don't listen to that hoser. Join the dark side, eh?
And Friday, it's one of the most beloved American musicals ever, West Side Story in Navajo.
Maria, I just met a girl named Maria. Suddenly the name will never be the same.
So tune in for Classics Week, starting Monday right here on Dub Theater.
Constitution Radio with Douglas V. Gibbs has come to KMET. Listen live Saturdays at 1 p.m. right here on KMET 1490 AM.
56 minutes from now on KMET AM 1490.com. Or is it? No, KMET 1490am.com. I want to get that right. Don't want to send you to the wrong place. For Constitution Radio with Douglas V. Gibbs, 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific, the third hour of the Saturday afternoon extravaganza, and there's been no experimental dry run drip Skype call-in yet, so we will cover, in the meantime, the next story in the stack, which would be, story number 10. United Kingdom continues to move rightward. Now, this is fascinating. You know how I said the other day that this is, I think, one of those rare instances in which Alla Pundit of hotair.com, one of his trademark, in which his trademark pessimism is perhaps unwarranted? No, I don't think the Democrat nominee, whoever that is, will fail to carry California next year. But if it is Hillary after all, and the GOP has the collective sense to nominate a certain Wisconsin governor you may have heard of, and if Barack Obama allows the election to take place, I think the built-in Democrat Electoral College advantage conventional wisdom will be Hulk busted wide open. Yes, that's an Age of Ultron reference. And you know how they say that where Britain is today, America will be tomorrow, or words to that effect? Well, accordingly, is not this cause for the right to be optimistic and even, dare I say, bullish about 2016? The quote is from the Washington Post. Greg Sargent, no less. British Prime Minister David Cameron prepared to form a new government Friday morning while an ashen, I love that description, an ashen Labour Party leader, Imam Ed Miliband, you know, the guy who declared last week that if he became Prime Minister, he would push through a ban on Islamophobia through the British Parliament. He conceded defeat after voters defied predictions of a deadlocked election and put the Conservative Party on the cusp. And by the way, they went beyond the cusp. The British Parliament has 650 seats, and the Conservatives won 331. So they have an outright majority in the British Parliament now. They won by a landslide. So Cameron's party effectively had crossed the majority threshold anyway, but because they at one time in the vote count, they controlled 323 seats. 323 seats is enough in the British Parliament because 4 lawmakers from Northern Ireland's Sinn Féin, or Sinn Féin, the IRA in essence, Northern Ireland Sinn Féin party refused to take their seats in Parliament. So they, and of course, like I say, the British Conservatives ended up with 331 seats, an outright majority. So they don't even need to form a coalition with any other party, other than to pad the majority they already have by themselves. Now, of course, what was the conventional wisdom, ladies and gentlemen? Same thing as over here. That the Tories were in trouble and that Labour had an insurmountable electoral advantage and that Muzzy-loving Ed Miliband was inevitable. That's what all the polls said over there, and of course they were all grossly, grotesquely, hilariously wrong. And so it didn't turn out the actual election, the actual and only poll that actually matters, didn't quite turn out the way the British media hoped. So, I mean, looking ahead 18 months with the right candidate, Scott Walker, excuse me. I don't know why I can never seem to reach the cough button in time. Why can't the GOP win its biggest presidential landslide in 28 years? Which, wouldn't really be a landslide. I'm projecting 297 electoral votes of Scott Walker as the GOP nominee next year. But, in any case, Ed Morrissey's exit quip sounds like a sneak preview of election night 541 days from now. That's pretty remarkable for a party that pollsters had all but buried just 24 hours earlier. Well, 24 hours, 6 years. I mean, the American left buried us 6.5 years ago, didn't they? Conservatism is dead. The Republican Party is dead. We are all socialists now. Remember that Newsweek cover? Early 2009? We are socialists now. Yeah, how'd that turn out? I really think, now you know me, I own everything I say, because there's 1,300 or so podcasts on Hard Starboard Radio, American Daily Review, the first 200 episodes of Constitution Radio with Douglas V. Gibbs and KCAA. By the way, if you want one or more copies of those podcasts, send an email to jasmius@comcast.net, JASMIUS. Specify the date. I'll be happy to send it to you because that's the only way you're going to get a copy, because that that podcast page at KCAA, Hard Starboard Radio will be celebrating its 8-year anniversary on May 26th. But for the last 6.5 years, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of podcasts in which I have certainly over the last 2.5 years, when I've been very pessimistic about the former American Republic and resurrecting it. But I'll tell you what, if the Republican Party nominates a candidate who is actually a serious candidate, not a senator, not a pretender, not a draft him or draft her or whatever, someone with executive experience who can unify the party, who has a track record of conservative policy accomplishment and let's just say Tea Party street cred as a fighter, then I know a certain governor of Wisconsin who would fit that bill, and he would have a very good chance of winning if the 2016 election is allowed to take place, of course. So like I say, what happened in the British elections 2 days ago could very well be a harbinger of things to come 18 months from now.
And can you hear me just fine?
Yeah, I can hear you. The acoustics weren't quite as good as with the phone connection, but they're better than last week. They're better than last week.
Okay, well, we still got work to do. But now, am I loud enough? Because I can also, increase or decrease, as necessary.
I can hear you just fine. Yeah, I wouldn't increase it.
All right, well, Alex is out of the room right now, but when he returns, we'll see if his headset and mic is working just fine as well.
Yeah, give me a heads up on that, too.
Yeah, absolutely. So where are we at?
Story number 9, America's Economic House of Cards.
Yeah, and I actually like this way better. I've got a mic in front of my face and 2 hands available without holding the phone in my ear. And I'll take this. So we're at the KMET studio, sort of. And it's working out pretty good. So Economic House of Cards. So how much have you talked about it?
Well, I covered story number 10. The United Kingdom continues to move rightward.
Yeah, which isn't really rightward for what we would like to see, but for them, it's leaps and bounds.
Well, really, it's more. The story is more that they didn't turn back leftwards because, as I'm sure you saw last week, Ed Miliband, the labor leader, was promising that if he became prime minister, he would push through legislation that would officially ban Islamophobia throughout the United Kingdom. So that's why I refer to him as Imam Ed. Imam Ed Miliband, and of course, labor they got destroyed. I mean, it was
funny. And it was funny. It was with the early returns and all that. We're saying, it's going to be close, and what sounds like the American ones. It's going to be close, and gosh, it looks like conservatives can barely pull it off. No, they, for lack of a better word, slaughtered their opposition.
Oh yeah, the conservatives won 331 seats in the 650-member parliament. And which is really 646 because 4 Northern Ireland MPs who are members of Sinn Féin, which is the political arm of the Irish Republican Army, they don't take their seats. They don't participate. So the British Conservatives have an outright majority in Parliament. So the only reason they need to create a coalition with any other British political party is to pad their majority. They already own one all by themselves.
And I wonder what this will do for the UKIP party, which is even more conservative than Cameron's party. UKIP, if they continue to gain ground, what it's saying is Europe, or especially the British, have tried socialism for a very, very long time, a lot longer than now we're starting to dance with, and they're finding that it just, doesn't work, and they want to head in the other direction. That's what it's coming down to.
Well, actually, if I recall correctly, the UKIP lost seats due to not directly out of disapproval or dislike or rejection of them, but just due to kind of odd circumstances. So I wouldn't write off UKIP, but they didn't gain ground in the British elections. But like I say, the Conservatives won an outright majority, so I suppose they don't really need UKIP. Although, I'll tell you what, if I were David Cameron, I would strongly advise him to add UKIP to his coalition.
Oh, absolutely.
You can never have too many friends.
Oh, exactly. I fully agree. Now, moving on, I'm also, by the way, communicating with Melissa Barnhart, who will be on the show no less than an hour right now.
Mm-hmm.
Same time. But anyway, America's Economic House of Cards, though, what have you said so far about that? Because that's really been your articles, and you and I have talked about this. And basically, what we've got is an artificially held-up economy that it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when it collapses.
Well,
it may really actually be collapsing and we just, don't realize it because it's doing it so slowly because of the artificial, means in place.
Well, we know that the Obama administration pads the numbers.
Right.
The artificially reports the unemployment rate as way lower than it is, and artificially gooses the GDP numbers. Well, the GDP number for first quarter 2015 that they reported a week ago was 0.2%, 0.2%. And of course, if that's the number they're reporting, then you can pretty safely conclude that we're shrinking, maybe even in free fall. But it's all covered. There's this veneer, this fake camouflage of economic growth and prosperity because of the $4.5 billion of fiat currency that the Fed has issued over the last 6.5 years, the Federal Reserve, for those of you in Malaga, Washington. And they're keeping interest rates as close to zero as possible. And so the other day, I noticed another economic commentator. In this case, it was Stephen Roach, a Yale University economist. Again, pulling aside the green curtain, so to speak, and showing the great and powerful Wizard of Oz in the White House, and he proceeded to say exactly what that which is not supposed to be said. The easy money antics of the Federal Reserve and other central banks are delusional and bound to lead to a global crack-up. Let's see, or in other words, printing avalanches of fiat waste paper to create the illusion of economic recovery. This has led to inflation of assets like stock and encouragement of currency depreciation, which is another way of saying
I'm on my way out of town.
Which is another way of saying stocks are hugely overvalued and we're heading for another stock market crash. Currency depreciation means inflation,
I don't have to losing. This stuff's wireless.
Oh, okay.
Losing and eroding the value of the U.S. dollar, getting it removed as the global currency of record. He called it ingredients for disaster. The world economy is The world economy is in the grips of a dangerous delusion, he declared in a program for Project Syndicate. Not only have wealth and currency effects failed to spur any recovery in post-crisis economies, because the crisis, of course, never really ended, they have also spawned new destabilizing influences that threaten to keep the global economy trapped in a continuous series of crises. Despite the failure of Fed policy, Roach noted that both Europe and Japan have rushed to imitate U.S. quantitative easing. In other words, printing money like there's no tomorrow. And by the way, Barack Obama does too have international influence.
Testing 1, 2, 3.
I hear you.
Okay. I'm trying to figure out which mic is which. All right, now I'm a test. Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear that one too.
Okay, no, you hear me pretty clearly. Oh, it must be this one. Testing 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Ah, well, the other mics are either picking me up really well, or which one was strongest, the first, second, or third one?
They all sounded the same to me. As far as I know, you could have just been talking into one and claiming you're talking into three, so they all sounded the same to me.
Oh, okay.
Let's see. As the baton of excessive liquidity injections is passed from one central bank to another, the dangers of global asset bubbles and competitive currency devaluations intensify. Relying on financial engineering while avoiding the heavy lifting of structural change is not a recipe for a healthy recovery. In fact, it's not a recipe for recovery, period, but permanent economic depression, which we just happen totally coincidentally to be in. And folks, return to free market capitalism, and we sure as heck can't do that. Wouldn't be moving forward, you see. So this is just another. It's becoming a choir of economic notables, movers and shakers, and sometimes even experts, who are pulling aside the veil and revealing, hey, you know what? We're headed for the cliff. We're like Thelma and Louise in the convertible, headed straight for the cliff. And unlike the young James T. Kirk in the first movie, we're not going to jump out at the last moment. So, just it's not.
It didn't leave it to you to do that, to use movie references.
Well, yeah, that's kind of what I do. But it's. I'm trying to keep my headphones plugged in. It's not so much news as just more voices joining the chorus that well, as I like to call it, the chorus of doom.
Okay.
And then there was another.
I want us to do something real quick. I want us to test Alex here, see how he sounds. Alex, why don't you pull the microphone closer to your mouth? I want to see if he can hear you just fine, or if we have to.
The communist points at our sins with a bloody hand indeed. He picks and he digs at our sores until he makes bleed.
How's that sound?
How's that sound?
Alex is coming through loud and clear.
Okay. Well, apparently we can do this then. All right.
Estamos listo.
Welcome to American Daily Review, Alex.
Wow. Are we on the air?
Yeah.
Oh, I'll be
yeah, we're on American Daily Review.
Wow. You know, I got to come up with entrance music for Alex. I'll have to try to think of something.
Well, yeah, because, you know, if we keep doing this, he might even become a participant in the show more regularly in the future.
Yeah, do it with bagpipes. That's the way I'm going out.
That's the way you're going out?
Might as well be the way I come in.
Oh well, I don't have much in the way of bagpipes. I'll have to look for rummage around YouTube for something with bagpipes. Any particular tune you would like to come in on?
Amazing Grace is my favorite on bagpipes.
Oh, okay. Might give people the wrong impression, but then they'll rejoice when they realize that you have not kicked the bucket after all.
Or you could go to Western swing, you know, something with Bing Crosby or Hank Snow or something like that.
On bagpipes?
No, that would be more on.
That would be fun.
I'm ambidextrous here.
You're ambidextrous?
Yeah, I go either way.
You sure you want to say that out loud?
When I was teaching, I had a whole music program where I taped every genre. And I would familiarize the kids with what, you know, whatever it happened to be. And what impressed me most as I was doing that, I also had a movie program for teaching history. I had about 20 movies that went through Western civilization, from Clash of the Titans and Ten Commandments to Apollo 13. And what I discovered was that all this leftist garbage about how America doesn't have a real culture of its own, it's only a hodgepodge. What we as Americans have created over the last couple of centuries in terms of music, in terms of literature and movies, we are a fountain of creativity. And that's purely because of the Constitution we live under. Other countries have smart people and talented people too, but you don't see them creating musical comedy. You don't see them creating all the genre that we have. From, like, if you watch TV as much as an old retired guy like I do, Time Life sells these various record sets about or containing swing, country, rock and roll, all these, and there's song after song after song. It's just mind blowing that our society has created so much beauty, and yet we are to be ashamed.
Well, the American people's not the problem. The leadership right now is the problem.
Boy, you ain't kidding. People
but we're trying to import a whole new culture, which brings us to story number 8. Obamnesty.
Yeah, I think one day the entire population of the planet will reside within the boundaries of the United States. And then the Vulcans will arrive in 2063, and we're going to have just a grand old time trying to explain the logic of that to them.
Well, they're just going to throw a fiesta for them.
Yeah, I'm glad I won't be around by that time. I'll leave. Now you're sounding like Commander Riker. I plan to live forever.
Well, not forever, just longer than everybody else.
Oh, the Lazarus Long principle, yeah. Yeah, outliving somebody is the best revenge. Because your enemy winds up the way that you want him, and you don't have to do it.
Yeah, worm food. All right, well, story number 8, Obamnesty. Obama is still defying anti-Obamnesty. Well, here's what's going on. Here's what's fascinating about what's been going on, and please jump in when you want to and when you need to, is, remember, President Barack Obama believes he is above the law. He's above everyone else. He does not have to adhere to the law. And therefore, even his beloved court system, who's telling him he's acting in a manner he can't. He doesn't care what they say.
Well, and he is continuing to do that. Although, at least this week, as I wrote about this morning, actually it was just last night at politicalpistachio.com, they're pretending to be contrite about it. Now, the latest thing that's happened, and this is, folks, to provide some context, this gets back to in February when Federal District Judge Andrew Hanen in Brownsville, Texas, so for the Southern District of Texas, imposed a court cease and desist order against every single aspect of what we refer to as Obamnesty, which dates back to the Immigration Proclamation last November the 20th. That would legalize, for functional purposes, they claim only 4 to 5 million illegal aliens, but some reports I've seen indicate that it could be as many as 20 million. And so Judge Hanen told them to stop, and it was on constitutional grounds. The Article 1, Section 1 legislative power belongs to Congress. And Judge Hanen said President Obama does not have the authority to do what's being done through and by means of the Immigration Proclamation. And then it was only the very next week that the Obama administration announced they were just going to go ahead anyway, and so that pissed off Judge Hanen, and so he threatened them with sanctions and whatever else. And so then, we hadn't heard anything about that for a while, and then comes this story. This is from the WashingtonTimes.com. Barack Obama's lawyers admitted to a federal judge late Thursday that they had broken the court's injunction halting the administration's new deportation amnesty, again, issuing thousands of work permits even after Judge Andrew Hanen had ordered the program stopped. The stunning admission filed just before midnight in Texas, where the case is being heard, is the latest misstep for the administration's lawyers who are facing possible sanctions by Judge Hanen for their continued problems in arguing the case. The Justice Department lawyer said Homeland Security, which is the defendant in the case, told them Wednesday that an immigration agency had approved about 2,000 applications for 3-year work permits which was part of the Immigration Proclamation, even after Judge Hainan issued his February 16th injunction halting the entire program. And, of course, the Obama administration had argued that, well, that injunction didn't halt the whole program. They tried to interpret it as narrowly as possible. And then Judge Hainan said, no, he used the term any and all in his injunction. Meaning, now, any and all, when I was growing up, meant includes everything and excludes nothing. So the whole thing is supposed to be halted, and yet, as we see here, the Obama administration is rolling ahead anyway. Top Obama officials, including Homeland Security Secretary Jay Johnson, had repeatedly assured Congress they had fully halted the program and were complying with the order, or in other words, the old Clinton excuse of mistakes were made. And he said the government sincerely regrets these circumstances and is taking immediate steps to remedy these erroneous 3-year terms, the administration lawyer said, probably by making them permanent and preparing to issue millions more of them. But then they're sorry, right? Doesn't that cover every sin when you're on the left?
Yeah, all you gotta do is say you're sorry. Sorry means that you capitulate, right?
Only if you're a Republican.
I'm afraid that this is where I get into loony land, because I'm absolutely terrified of Obama's attitude toward the other branches of government. His wife at one point said he's not so much a president as he is still a community activist. He doesn't recognize the limits on his power. He feels that he's managed to get into a position where he can fulfill Frank Marshall Davis's desires and plans, and he's going to go ahead and do whatever he damn pleases to accomplish that, whether or not it conflicts with the Constitution. And the reason that terrifies me is because it's so easy for him to decide during some kind of crisis that we need martial law. And I don't see anything in his philosophy, anything in his behavior that would indicate that he is not perfectly prepared to call down martial law when it suits him.
Well, not only that, I was going to say, not only that, but you've got a public which is overwhelmingly against illegal immigration. Overwhelmingly against. What? No, numbers are manipulated. I know what your headline says. In the blue state of Oregon, last November, they voted to repeal their the law made by their legislators to give driver's licenses to illegal aliens. Overwhelmingly, Americans are against illegal immigration. But when you're taking polls in certain places, and you're asking the questions in certain ways, you can get them to say whatever you want.
Oh, yeah. I mean, all the usual polling caveats apply for media polling. But the only cautionary caveat I would throw in there is that if there's one thing that we should have learned by now, it's that we can't just dismiss every poll that produces results we don't like, even though we know that they have their thumb on the scale and they manipulate questions and so on and so forth.
Yeah, but I live in blue Southern California, and even the blue areas have a problem with illegal immigration. Of course, one of the reasons. I mean, I've got friends and people I know who live in Compton and your black neighborhoods, and they're angry at it because, well, for example, Compton's a great example. Watts also is because the illegal aliens are driving blacks out of their own neighborhoods.
I saw a thing last night on TV about how the Obama administration is showing signs of getting ready to close down Guantanamo. And they showed the public opinion polls on that, and I'm pretty sure that 58% of the American people do not want it closed down. But he doesn't care whether it's the Constitution or public opinion or whatever. He's going to do what he wants to do.
Is there anybody still in Gitmo?
I think they have a couple of hundred people left.
That many?
I think
wow.
so. I could be wrong on that, but I thought it was somewhere between 100 and 200 people. I could be wrong.
Are any of them jihadists?
All of them are. They're the worst of the worst at this point. That's the last 5 that he let go for Bergdahl were the absolute worst possible criminals that we could have in that category. They're planners, they're generals, they're shot callers, and he let them go. And my question is, whose side is this guy on?
I trust that's a rhetorical question.
Well, he's certainly deliberately losing the war against ISIS. It reminds me of this German Wings co-pilot, who slowly and surely dove his passenger plane into a mountain. I feel like one of the people in that plane. This guy is diving us into. What are we going to do when this whole thing blows up in our face, and we got nowhere to run? What do we do?
Well, they raised the threat level yesterday at U.S. domestic military bases.
And they're still allowing people to pour over the border, unchecked, unregulated.
Oh, yeah, including under the watchful eye of the Obama Bureau of Land Management, too.
According to CNN, 136 prisoners remain in military custody at the U.S. Naval Base there at Guantanamo Bay, despite the release of 6 more prisoners recently and about 100 that have been released since 2009. Now, he says that he's ended, Obama says he's ended the CIA's torture program, but his administration has yet to come close to shutting down Guantanamo Bay, which he promised to do from the very beginning.
It was going to be by the end of 2008. It was going to be by the end of his first year in office, as I recall. And I tried to do it, and even the Democrat Congress of Nancy Pelosi and Harry Reid wouldn't go along with that. But he's just been doing it on his own initiative, under the radar, regardless of what the law and the Constitution say.
He's not governing, he's ruling, and he's ruling in defiance of the will of the American people on almost every issue at this point.
Yeah, pretty much says it. It's 20 minutes before the hour, so let's go on to story number 7, Obamacare travesty. And there's only, under this umbrella, the umbrella of this story, there's only one thing we can talk about, it seems to me. That is the Mitch McConnell, Rand Paul, and the Great Obamacare small business caper. Now, did either of you get the details of this story when it broke on Thursday?
No, you're on top of it.
Oh my God. This is amazing. Here's the lead under the heading Kentucky cockroaches. I thought you would appreciate that one, Doug. This is broken at nationalreview.com.
Right. Yeah, and I read the article, but you've got it in front of you.
The rumors began trickling in about a week before the scheduled vote on April 23rd. Republican leadership was quietly pushing senators to poll support for subpoenaing Congress's fraudulent application to the District of Columbia's health cartel, the document that facilitated Congress's exemption from Obamacare by allowing lawmakers and staffers to keep their employer subsidies. The application said Congress employed just 45 out of the tens of thousands of people that Congress actually employs. Names were faked. One employee was listed as first last. Another was simply labeled as Congress. To Small Business Committee Chairman David Vitter of Louisiana, who has fought for years against the Obamacare exemption, it was clear that someone in Congress had falsified the document in order to, you think, In order to make lawmakers and their staff eligible for taxpayer subsidies provided under the cartel for small business employees. But until Vitter got a green light from the Small Business Committee to subpoena the unredacted application from the District of Columbia Health Cartel, it would be impossible to determine who in Congress gave it a stamp of approval. When Vitter asked Republicans on his committee to approve the subpoena, however, he was unexpectedly stonewalled. So that's the first part of this. Mm-hmm. But it gets better. With 9 Democrats on the committee lined up against the proposal, naturally, the Chairman Vitter, needed the support of all 10 Republicans to issue the subpoena. But though it seems an issue tailor-made for the Tea Party star and Republican presidential candidate, Senator Rand Paul refused to lend his support.
Now, listeners, like I've said a number of times, I like Rand Paul, but there are times where he leaves me scratching my head. This is one of them.
He's a libertarian. That's the problem.
When the Louisiana Senator Vitter set a public vote for April 23rd, Majority Leader Mitch McConnell and his allies got involved, quote unquote. For whatever reason, leadership decided they wanted that vote to be 5-5 among the Republicans on the committee. Why? To give Senator Paul cover, according to one high-ranking committee staffer. So they worked at a member level to change the votes of otherwise supportive senators. 4 Republicans, Senators Mike Enzi of Wyoming, James Risch of Idaho, Kelly Ayotte of New Hampshire, and Deb Fisher of Nebraska, had promised to support Vitter, but that soon changed. Now, it wasn't until after the vote that Rand Paul's office offered any comment or any reasoning for how he voted on that matter. Here's what his Senator Paul's office said. Senator Paul opposes allowing Congress to exempt themselves from any legislation. To that end, yesterday a few weeks ago, reintroduced his proposed constitutional amendment to prohibit Congress from passing any law that exempts themselves. Senator Paul prefers this option over a partisan cross-examination of congressional staff. But a constitutional amendment is a long shot that would take years, and it hardly precludes an investigation of congressional corruption here and now. Robert Moffat, the director of the Center for Health Policy Studies at the Conservative Heritage Foundation, said that's absurd. You don't get a constitutional amendment subpoena. I don't know where he's coming from. Well, actually, I think we do. I think Rand Paul has been assimilated. Or put another way, we are all establishmentarians now. It begs the question, who signed off on that fraudulent Obamacare application? Because the notion that each senator is his own small business, which, those 4 senators who changed their votes on committee, 3 of them had the brains to just say no comment. But Senator Enzi of Wyoming just clung to that BS alibi that, well, I'm a small business. But who signed off on this application? And why because if it's a Democrat, why are the Republicans protecting whoever that person is? Harry Reid. Excuse me. There's really not a whole lot you can say about it. I mean, it speaks for itself, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Well, one of the things that, excuse me for going off on a tangent here, that's kind of my job. One of the things that mostly disturbs me is this redaction thing. We're supposed to have an open and transparent government. There are laws for FOIA. Judges order documents released, and when they get released, you hear the people involved saying, well, most of the page is redacted. Most of it is black marker. Well, who gets to decide what we're not allowed to see under a legitimate subpoena? Who gets to decide whether or not these papers are to be censored? And it seems to me that we need the Congress to pass a law appointing certain judges to review these documents and determine that in fact there is a legitimate danger to revealing this information, because most of it doesn't seem to be dangerous at all. It just seems to be inconvenience to the Democrats.
Well, and plus, I mean, what you can't anything related to any domestic policy, any domestic issue, Obamacare, they can't exactly hide that behind a national security wall.
But they do.
I mean, how national security would be damaged by the American people learning about how Congress fraudulently exempts itself from the statist abominations that they impose on everybody else is, well, it's something that escapes me.
But I did hear you say that those documents have been heavily redacted, right?
Yeah, they were. I mean, you kind of do. They'd be more honest and transparent to just say, no, we're not going to give you what you're demanding. Because I mean, to supply documents and then have everything redacted is functionally saying no, you can't have it.
Well, when you say that they are going to be reasonable and whatever, I lost the exact words that you used 2 sentences ago. These people are out of control, just flat out of control.
Yes, they are. They're absolutely out of control, and that's kind of the point. They believe that they are entitled to be out of control, to be out from under the rule of law and accountability to it, and to what is supposed to be the law of the land, the United States Constitution, and they continue to do so. And it's one of those things where until somebody, they're not going to voluntarily retreat back within the bounds of the law and the Constitution. Somebody's going to have to push them back.
Well,
and that's
I'm doing a book review today on common sense. And Thomas Paine, one of his major points was that the British government was a fraud because it pretended to have checks and balances. Mm-hmm. But in fact, everything was decided by the king. And it was rubber stamped or not by the House of Commons and the House of Lords. But the House of Commons and the House of Lords were basically window dressing. And I think that's what we're getting to here in America. Our checks and balances no longer check, and they sure as hell don't balance. For a judge to tell the Obama administration, what about that? They did a moratorium on drilling, if you remember, in the beginning of the administration, after that oil spill. And a judge declared it illegal, and so they said okay, and then they put on another moratorium, and they kept putting on moratoriums. The judge would cancel them. He got tired. That's not checks and balances. That's tyranny.
Well, and it's supposed to trigger more direct and severe measures like impeachment, and of course. Yeah, it's supposed to, but then anybody who thinks that the first black president is going to be impeached by a Republican Congress, stand on your head. I mean, it's just politics of it are what they are, and it's never going to happen. And it should happen. I mean, this should be something that members of Congress are willing to put their political careers on the line to do. To do the right thing. I mean, it's their duty under the Constitution. But
they didn't start doing this stuff until they'd already managed to take over the colleges and the media. That's the point. They've got cover.
Well, they're covered from every direction by this time.
And people won't get involved because they don't believe this is going on. If they hear you say this is going on, you're a conspiracy theorist or you're a kook or whatever, and they're not really going to be concerned. They're not going to get involved until everything hits rock bottom, and they're at the bottom of the barrel.
And then, of course, it'll be too late.
Right.
It'll be too late. I mean, that's kind of the idea. Just getting back to this polling, eroding public opposition to Obama's amnesty. I mean, it's not that more and more Americans are switching over and supporting it. It's that a lot of Americans are just resigned to it, and that's why Obama did it. I mean, get it in place, make it a fait accompli, and eventually people will just kind of throw up their hands and say, well, what can we do?
It reminds me a lot of the McCarthy era, which I study diligently. The House Un-American Activities Committee and McCarthy's committee, they came up with absolute solid evidence that the Roosevelt administration was full of espionage agents and fellow travelers and all of that. And what happened was, again, another analogy, it's like General Custer, he's looking for Indians, and he found too many of them. And McCarthy was looking for communists, and he ran into a hailstorm, a tornado of opposition that wiped him out, and made, they literally said, and still say, the left does, that the real enemies to America were not the espionage agents and the fellow travelers, but the people who were hunting them down. So we're in the same situation. You try to impeach Obama, and you're going to suffer the same fate as Joe McCarthy. They'll crucify you.
Oh, really, he should have been. See, the problem now is he's in the last biennium of his two-term presidency. Hopefully it'll only be 2 terms. But he should have been impeached long before this. I mean, it's like how the Republicans in the Clinton era, how they waited until he was going into his last 2 years to impeach him. They should have impeached him long before that, but they didn't do it. And so, by the time that you enter the last 2 years of a 2-term presidency, I mean, technically, the president is a lame duck, and so people are just thinking in terms of, let's think in terms of the next election, and why bother now? He's going to be out next year anyway, and so on and so forth. I mean, I'm not saying that's not right, but that's the politics of it.
And finally, story number 6 before we run out of time here. The ISIS threat. We've got is this this heightened threat monitor? Is this here in the United States?
Yeah, U.S. Domestic military bases. They raised the threat level to Bravo level, which is the 3rd highest terror alert level. And it's in relation to, they say there isn't any specific threat that they're aware of, but just general chatter on social media and other intelligence sources. They're at least for public consumption, they're increasing the security level at U.S. military bases here in the United States. We're not talking about overseas. We're talking about here at home.
Right. The head of the FBI just came out and admitted that there were jihadist conspiracies going on in every state. And it brings me back to during the Gulf War when we said, look, we're going over there to fight them there so we don't have to fight them here. And all the liberals and leftists laughed and jeered and all the usual activity, and yet, once again, that's exactly correct. We're not fighting them there, and so they're here fighting us.
Well, and it should be pointed out the sophistication of the Islamic State's recruitment in the West, including here in the United States. I mean, when Al-Qaeda unleashed 9/11, it was a sneak attack. The Islamic State's so confident of its inevitable triumph that They're proudly publicizing their imminent North American offensive like a movie studio ad blitzing a summer blockbuster. And, of course, they have a lot of de-Christianized empty vessels for whom pop culture idols and the welfare state have not provided any meaning to their lives. And then along comes the Islamic State, and when it's like it goes back to what Christ himself said in the Gospels. When a man is emptied out of bad things, he's got to be filled up with good things, because spiritually as well as in nature abhors a vacuum. And so you have to fill people up with the right things, with the right culture, and once you drain people of that, then along will come the evil people to fill it back up.
During the Vietnam War,
we're done.
And we're down to the last minute, so.
Well, I was just going to say that during the Vietnam War, J. William Fulbright went to the Pentagon and complained that they'd made a video to show to the troops about the evils of communism and the superiority of our system, and he ordered them to get rid of that thing and Sullivan's passion.
And then there's Jasmine up there in the great state of Washington with us. Welcome to the show, as always, Jasmine. It's great having you with us, as always.
No matter where I am, here I am.
And we've got a lot of things to talk about today. And it's been a busy week. It's been a very busy week.
Isn't it always?
You want to talk about interesting times? I mean, holy cow! Now, one of those things with interesting times, and we'll get into it in just a few minutes. We're going to have a caller in just a few minutes regarding this. Is Pamela Geller's Draw Mohammed? I don't know if I want to call it a contest or an event, or it was something like that. They're in Garland, Texas, and what wound up happening is it angered Islamists, Muslims. I'm totally stunned by that, Jasmine.
Yeah, I know. That's a banner headline, wasn't it?
Yeah, but all that said, I want to real quick, because once again we're limited on time here, and we've got someone getting ready to call in. But I wrote a piece, and I'm not going to read the whole thing. I had planned to, but I'm not going to. But I really want to kind of touch on it. I wrote a piece called "Why Aren't the Republicans Fighting Harder?" You said, well, you can pretty much leave off that last word. Why aren't the Republicans fighting? And I think that's a good point. And because we've got a party here that's pretty much just laying down and doing nothing. And like I said in my article that I wrote, and it's called "Why Aren't the Republicans Fighting Harder?" It's on politicalpistachio.com, among other places. Culture drives politics, and politics drives culture, and we've turned our backs on God. And the more we compromise, the more we lose our virtuous society, and it becomes this depraved, decadent, dependent upon an oppressive federal government type of system. And
the Republican Party is, I like to compare it to a battered wife, beaten down so many times that the desire to fight back has been beaten out of the party. People flocked to Ronald Reagan because he articulated conservative principles. He spoke the language of liberty. These people don't know how to do that. They don't plan to do that because in some ways the party has become not a whole lot different than the Democrats. When it comes to the idea of big government, limited government's a we the people idea. Big government, well, if they were to side with us on limited government, they would lose power. And that's where it gets frustrating for us as citizens. And then when we try to speak up, well, then we're labeled, racist, bigot, hater. And now the words Tea Party or Republican is synonymous with those terms. The Republican leadership is fearful. It's unwilling to stand against attacks. It's often falls for the rhetoric themselves. The Republicans are ignorant of what the people really want. They believe that the liberal left has somehow become the majority, when I really believe the true believers are only about 14% of the population. They've decided the only way to survive is compromise. And then if a few morsels fall off the table, then they get them. And they lose 2 steps to gain a half a step. They refuse to go on the offensive and expose the radical extremism that the hard left socialists of the Democrat Party truly represent. And as all of this is happening, the reality is the Republican Party has been infiltrated. Big government status reside throughout the grand old party. And, I don't believe that there's absolutely no difference between the two parties, don't get me wrong. But I do believe that gap of separation between them is narrowing day by day. And, if they abandon what's important to me, because I didn't take an oath to the Republican Party, I took an oath to the Constitution, I've taken an oath to God. And if this party abandons the Constitution and God, they've lost my vote. Simple as that. Now, that said, I do believe the Republican Party is our horse in the race. We're racing a jackass on the other side. Democrat Party, isn't that the other word for donkey? And it's stubborn, and it's a horrid animal. Our horse should have no problem beating it. But the problem is we're so busy beating our horse and pulling on it and yanking it and slapping it, and it's stubborn, and it's biting us, and it's kicking. Nothing is getting done. And, we need to take that horse, our horse in the horse race, and teach it, train it, grab it by the reins, and lead it. But we seem to prefer sitting on the couch complaining. That's not an effective strategy. I'm sorry, folks. That just doesn't work. I mean, the Constitution gives 5 tools for restoring the Republic, but we don't have the intestinal fortitude to pursue it. Jasmine, go ahead.
Yeah, I think the best way to express it, the difference between the parties, is the Democrat Party is a revolutionary party. The Republican Party is not a counter-revolutionary party.
Yeah, and the Founding Fathers were revolutionaries. I mean, they saw it their duty to secure the blessings of liberty. And here we are doing what? Sitting there fearful in the corner, afraid to... Well, and the reason why I wanted to bring this up is because what we already talked about, what happened in Garland. The Pamela Geller is getting all kinds of harsh rhetoric from the right. How dare you provoke? That was too provocative. We're in a war. Have they not noticed? I stand with Pamela Geller because she understands something that most people don't seem to understand. We are in a war. All right, now to talk about this with us is an reporter and editor from the Christian Post, Melissa Barnhart, and she lives in Garland, Texas, so she's closer to that situation we are. She can explain to us a little more about what went on. Melissa, welcome to the program here on KMET 1490 AM.
Thank you, Doug. I appreciate you for having me on this afternoon. I live about just a couple miles away from the Curtis Colwell Center where this event occurred, Pamela Geller's Muhammad event, the drawing. But also, before that, in January, on January 18th, there was the Stand with the Prophet event that was hosted by Sound Vision, which is a media organization that is growing to kind of combat U.S. media. And the event that they had, now they responded to Michelle Geller's event, and actually on the Sound Vision website, you can see their response to her. And in fact, what they have accused her of is psychological violence and with the intent to hurt and harm. And of course, they also condemned the act of the two suspects who committed the shooting. But and also on Monday, 3 Islamic leaders, one from CARE, a representative from CARE, then a representative from the Islamic Society of North America, and our Islamic Association of Tarrant County, which is more of the Fort Worth side of the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, came out and, of course, condemned the acts, but they also, the Islamic leader from Tarrant County accused Geller of hiding behind the First Amendment and the freedom of speech just to insult Muslims. So that goes to, that would lead one to question, is he saying that, she should not be protected under freedom of speech, or we shouldn't have freedom of speech if it insults Islam or any religion or any faith? So that is a question that your listeners would have to decide, is whether Pamela Geller's event violated the freedom of speech. If it did, then we have to also look at the event from January 18th that was hosted by Sound Vision, and the majority of the attendees who were there were from the Sunni Muslim mosques in the area, and that hosted 5 speakers, one of which was a New York-based imam, who I'm sure you know, was a friend of the blind sheikh, who was prosecuted by Andy McCarthy, and so he was one of the guest speakers, and so he's an alleged co-conspirator of the 1993 World Trade Center bombings. So if he was given the freedom of speech to speak, and that was okay. Now, there are protests against that as well. There were several hundred protesters against that, and then also counter-protests. But there were no violent acts committed that day.
Well, the thing is, and you can call me Captain Obvious if you want, but obviously there's a double standard here. We're being told that, the piss Christ, which was Jesus in a jar of urine, and some of these other things that we see out there, that's perfectly fine. That's freedom of speech. Burning the American flag, that's freedom of speech. But how dare you speak against Islam? The same thing's going on with the gay agenda, the same thing's going on with, anything that's on the left. It's the political correctness out of control, or as a quote I read, whether or not it can be properly attributed to Truman is still up in the air, but as I'm told he said was, political correctness is the belief that you can pick up a turd on the clean end. We've got this double standard that exists, and so I think Pamela Geller was simply trying to expose it for what it is. I think she was trying to elicit a response. I just don't think she believed that response would wind up being gunmen.
Correct, and I think they were very fortunate that it was held in Garland. Garland is a city, of course, that's has an outstanding police force. Also, we have a terrorist training site as well, so they were definitely well prepared for anything that might take place.
Now, how big of a city is Garland, Texas?
Okay, Garland, Texas. So we are in Dallas County, but not in the city of Dallas. We have about over 200,000 population. I would say probably between 250 to 285, possibly. Very diverse, conservative, but it's probably politically, I would say we're pretty balanced, 50-50, but a little bit more, conservative than you would say liberal or Democrats. But also we're very diverse ethnically, racially, and as far as, with religion. The radius of my home, like I said, I'm just a couple of miles away from where the event was held. But there's 3 to 5 mosques or Islamic centers, Sunni mosques or Islamic centers, that I would reach if I were to drive, around the radius of my home before I would get to the first Jewish temple, Temple Shalom. So before I would reach the first synagogue I would go to, I would pass by 5 different mosques. And in Richardson, Texas, is one of the largest Sunni mosques in the area. So, and of course, there's a lot of Shias too, but the Shias who are here are, I would say, if I were to guess, it would definitely be a lot more moderate than the Sunnis that are here. I have several Shia Muslim friends from various sects. Now, none of them were at the event that was on January 18th, the Stand with the Prophet event. Like I said, most of the people who I saw that were invited to the Stand with the Prophet event were Sunni Muslims. And of course, not all of them were. Some were more conservative, or we might call that radical, and some were more moderate in their beliefs. You know, some believed in Sharia law, some say no, they did not believe in Sharia law, and that's not what the event was about, because people were afraid that it was an event, a pro-Sharia law event. And that could be because Irving, Texas, now has the first known Islamic tribunal, which we call the Sharia law court. So they're overseeing civil disputes and marriage disputes.
I hate to cut you off.
Yes.
I've got to go to break. We just ran out of time. But, so your city, though, reminds me a lot of Riverside County, California, where I am at right here on KMET. It's very similar. So, and Murrieta, matter of fact, is known as one of the safest cities in the country. So, because of the police force, and we are prepared. But so it sounds like a snapshot of where we're at is what it sounds like. I'm going to let you go. We got Evan Sayed coming on out after the break. He, Evan Sayed gave us an absolutely interesting tweet, but I don't want to say it till he's on. So let's go to break. When we come back, Evan Sayed will be with us, and we'll talk about that. We'll talk to you later. What's your constitutional IQ? Your quest to learn the Constitution can be fun for the whole family. Learn about the Constitution as you play the Constitution Quest board game. Learn more at constitutionquest.com. The Constitution is America's owner's manual. Douglas V. Gibbs is America's Constitution Authority, broadcasting live on KMET, AM 1490 Saturdays at 1 p.m.
The true patriots of All-Star Collision have been proudly serving the Inland Empire for over 20 years. Built on honesty, integrity, quality, and old-fashioned customer service, we offer lifetime warranties for our work, and every vehicle serviced by All-Star Collision is washed, detailed, the headlights polished, fluids are checked and topped off, safety checked, and returned in showroom condition. We offer free estimates, are approved by major insurance companies, and accept all claims for all cars and trucks. We use computerized frame straightening to factory specifications, offer fiberglass body repair and paint, free local pickup and delivery, and after-hours towing. Mention this radio program at drop-off and receive $100 off or a free rental car for up to 5 days during your repair. Visit us at allstarci.com or at 522 Railroad Street in Corona. Call us at 951-279-9161. We are the kings of wreck and roll.
Help me fight the good fight. This radio program is funded by advertising dollars. So, if you are a business, add Constitution Radio with Douglas V. Gibbs to your business portfolio. If you are a listener, become a patron of the business's advertising on this program. Without advertising, your weekend dose of truth ends. With more advertising, Constitution Radio with Douglas V. Gibbs grows, and we will be on the way to win the battle to restore the Republic. To learn more, email us at constitutionspeaker@yahoo.com or visit douglasvgibbs.com.
Check us out online at KMET1490am.com.
And welcome back, Constitution Radio with Douglas V. Gibbs, right here on KMET, AM 1490, right here in the Pass area, throughout Southern California and worldwide at KMET1490am.com. And we just finished speaking with Melissa Barnhart, a reporter and editor for the Christian Post, who lives right there in Garland, Texas, talking about the event. Now we have conservative comedian Evan Sayed on the line with us. And Well, he had something to say on Twitter that, it got a few feathers ruffled. One of the responses to his tweet was, "Death is never funny." I don't know. I thought Beetlejuice was pretty funny, and I think death can be funny. Evan Sayah, welcome to the program right here on AM 1490 KMET. And let the folks know, what did you tweet that's got so many folks going nuts?
Okay, first of all, it is essential it be understood how far and how wide this tweet went. I don't just mean the number of people who retweeted. I'm sure there's more, many more, but I think it's something like 3,500 people retweeted it by now. But then it became a news story. It was covered in the Daily Caller. It was covered in Truth Revolt and PJ Media, but that was nothing. Then it was covered, and there was an article about it in The Independent. That's a British newspaper, but that's not even it. The one that blew my mind was there was an article about it in the Nigerian Herald.
No kidding.
Is that not stunning? All right, and what I tweeted was this. I hope I get the wording exactly right. I don't recall it exactly, but something to the effect of my favorite drawings at the Muhammad Cartoon Festival in Texas were the two chalk drawings, two chalk outlines out front.
Yeah, that's what you tweeted. Yeah, I thought it pretty much nailed it. Now you've got people like Bill O'Reilly who gets quite a bit of attention. He's angry. Pamela Geller was too provocative. She provoked this. Now I talked to Pamela,
which is absolutely disgusting. It is absolutely disgusting to blame the victim. There is absolutely no difference here between what some on our side, including O'Reilly, but everyone on their side saying that she provoked it. There's no difference between that and saying that the rape victim provoked the attack because she wore provocative clothing. It doesn't matter. This was a legal gathering, a free speech gathering, and on the other hand was attempted mass murder. And anybody who spends any time feeling the need to attack Pamela Geller rather than to discuss Islamic fascism and why they are so willing to commit mass murder, rape, genocide, and all the other things that they do on a regular basis. Not all Muslims, let's get that out of the way, just like not all cigarettes cause cancer, not everybody who has a drink has a car accident. But there's something about drinking that leads to car accidents. There's something about smoking that leads to cancer. And there's something about Islam that leads to atrocities.
Oh, absolutely. Now, I've known Pamela Geller for a number of years.
I'll tell you how well you know her. I'll tell you how well you know her, Doug. You know her well enough to never call her Pam.
Right. Yeah, you noticed Pamela. Yes, you noticed I said Pamela. Yeah, no, I've known her for a number of years. We go back to about 2007, and
that's a lot of years.
Yeah, I've known her for a while. Well, she, matter of fact, there was a time where I got attacked over something, and she was one of the first people to call me up and tell me to get back on the horse again. But I know for a fact that the idea here was to elicit a response. She knew there would be a response because that's what Islam is. And I don't think she necessarily expected this kind of response. But that said, here's what I said earlier, and I stand by this. I support Pamela Geller for what she did because she understands something that a lot of people don't seem to understand. We are at war. It's not our war. We didn't want to be in this war. But we are at war because they are waging war on us. And she's willing to fight that war the way it needs to be fought.
And, I'm always reminded of during World War II, that war was fought in every single conceivable way. Some people were assigned to and had the ability to work on creating the atomic bomb. Others were out there fighting in the field. Others were unable to do those things. They were buying war bonds. Others were planting victory gardens. And I remember famous pictures of that era where young girls, because there was no nylon for stockings, it was needed for the war effort, drew a black line up the back of their legs, simulating the seams as if they were wearing stockings. It was, did that win? Did that kill a single Nazi? Did that earn a single inch? I don't know. But it was the defiance that was part of the whole picture. And I think it's Rich Lowry, who is always great, in the National Review, which is always great, who took on this lie that this is about hate. It's not about hate. I mean, by the way, I've got nothing against hate. I hate evil. I hate rapists. I hate mass murderers. But this was an act of defiance. But you know what galls me, Doug, is that this cartoon drawing, and much of it was not disrespectful, it was simply drawing his image. Compare and contrast what the Islamists do when they draw a Jew in their editorial cartoons and their propaganda. But this was only part of the entire event. Another major part of the event was an art exhibit that showed that Muhammad was in fact portrayed in drawings and paintings throughout history. There's absolutely nothing in Islam that says you cannot show a depiction of Muhammad. That's invented sort of the way the Democratic Party's KKK, the Ku Klux Klan, that was the Democratic Party's militant wing. Just like if a black guy came down the street chewing gum, they would say, well, there's no chewing gum here in the South, and beat the crap out of him. It was just invented as an excuse to beat the crap out of him. And this whole you can't show Muhammad is absolutely an invented. It has nothing to do with Islam.
When you mention the unity that we had in World War II, you have to go back to the beginning when Stalin and Hitler were partners, and the American Communist Party was propagandizing against Roosevelt, against America. They only took our side when Hitler launched Operation Barbarossa against Russia. So you look at the situation now, you got these lefties at these colleges siding with the Islamists. Here they are. They had an interest in Stalin. They supported him. They're siding against us with people that would kill them first.
Well, it goes deeper than that, Alex. It goes
absolutely. You know, Doug, I know you've read my book, The Kindergarten of Eden, How the Modern Liberal Thinks. And because of their ideology, they will invariably side with evil over good. It doesn't matter whether it's here at home, where they will take the side of a violent, drug-addled Michael Brown over the good and decent cop who stopped him, or whether it's in the Middle East, where they will side with the Islamic, homophobic, xenophobic, I do believe even a little bit anti-Semitic Muslims against the liberal democracy of Israel. It goes back to, as you point out, siding with Hitler. And the only reason they finally went against Hitler was because they preferred the Soviet Union. They preferred communism to socialism, because communism is even further to the left than is socialism.
Before we let you go, Jasmine, you had another question?
No, I was just going to say the left sides with anybody who has the same enemies they do.
Pretty much.
Yeah,
now,
you're right.
Before we let you go, I know you got some concerts coming up. I want you to tell everybody where they can find you. evansayet.com, SAYET.com. But how else can they find what you're doing out there?
Well, that's the best thing to do. I mean, you go to Twitter, it's at Evan Sayet, S as in Sam, AYET. Just Google. If that's too much to remember, just Google Sayet, SAYET. There's nobody else with my name. I'm going on tour for the first time in a long time. It's going to be Phoenix, Chicago, Boston, New York, and then we're going to add some dates after that.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm excited for you, Evan, and I've known you now for quite a while, and I tell you what, you amaze me, but I do stand firm with you on your tweet. You're exactly right, and I think unlike a lot of those people out there, you and I both recognize, just like Pamela Geller does, this isn't just some political game. This isn't just some disagreements.
Do I have
the left and Islamists? They are waging war.
But do I have 1 second? If I do, anybody who takes exception and is outraged at a joke where would-be mass murderers are the butt, There's something very, very sick about their ideology.
Absolutely. Thank you, Evan, for joining us.
All right, good to talk to you.
All right. Thanks a lot. Bye. All right, so we've had Evan say it on today. We've had Melissa Barnhart. We'll hopefully have Pamela Geller on next week about this. Final words about this topic there, Jasmius.
Well, really what's at stake is the First Amendment. And it's really shocking that we have come to this point in the nation's history where so many people are willing to throw the First Amendment overboard, and so few people are willing, like Pamela Geller and like, of course, us here on Constitution Radio, to actually publicly speak out in defense of it.
These kids are not taught the Bill of Rights. They're not taught the uniqueness of American freedoms, so naturally they don't understand.
Yeah, and I think also we have to remember this, because people, Evan brought up something about, well, not all Muslims, are violent, but at the same time, they're still a part of the problem. Just like in Nazi Germany, not all Germans were Nazis, but they sure weren't very effective with battling against Nazism. They sure had no problem allowing Nazism to rise up and become what it was.
They were slaves on the winning side, or at least for a while, and then after Germany ended up losing the war, then all of a sudden, you couldn't find someone who would admit, a German who would admit that they'd been a Nazi.
I was only taking orders.
Only taking orders.
I was only obeying my superiors.
Let's talk about the war in Baltimore, since I think it is tied into what we're talking about, because it all comes down to freedom of speech. It comes down to our freedoms as Americans, and we've got this war in Baltimore going on over Freddie Gray. Did you see there was a guy that was out there in the streets that asked some of the rioters who Freddie Gray was, and they didn't know who he was?
Well, Freddie Gray is just a pretext.
Yeah, he was just the excuse for the opportunists to be out there.
Especially when you're dealing with a city government that has a black mayor, you got black minority majority on the police force.
Well, that's not the problem. The problem is that they're black nationalists. That there's a certain mentality among black nationalists. It's a socialist Marxist ideology.
But they're protesting against the people that they say are being discriminated against. I mean, it's so confused, and yet they keep rolling it.
What do you think? What do you think, Jasmius?
Well, did you know or see in the media? I think it was on Thursday. 10 people on Thursday alone were gunned down in Baltimore. 3 of them were killed. The murder rate since April 28th, since the riots died down, quote unquote, in Baltimore, I think it's the number of people who have been shot in Baltimore since then. So that's the last not even 2 weeks. 43 people have been shot in the city of Baltimore. And the reason why this is happening is, it's expressed best in this quote from the Baltimore Sun website. And this is police officers who were speaking on, anonymity. They didn't want to, understandably, they didn't want to be identified saying what they said. Here's the quote. I am hearing it from guys who were go-getters who would go out there and get the guns and the bad guys and drugs. They're hands off now. I've never seen so many dejected faces. Policing as we knew it has changed. Another Baltimore police officer, Lieutenant Victor Gearhart, who was willing to go on the record, 33-year veteran of the Baltimore Police Department, he said residents with complaints about police are going to get the police force they want, and God help them. The Baltimore police are now being deterred from enforcing the law, and what is the result? Chaos, which seems to be right in line with the left-wing agenda.
Well, going back to the same horse, I think it's been 50 years that Baltimore has been under Democratic rule.
Mm-hmm.
And all the problems they have are a result of that Democratic rule. And when you've got a mayor who tells the police to back off and let them get violent, how do you reconcile that with the need for jobs and the fact that 135 businesses were burned to the ground, including a CVS and an old folks home? These people, they make no sense at all, but the revolution feeds on this nonsense.
Well, I think a political cartoon captured the nonsense of it all the best. Yeah, these two rioters out and about, and these businesses were burning, and one turns to the other one and says, well, why was it that we're burning these businesses down again? The other one says, because we got no jobs, man.
That is their job. That's how I look at it.
Now, the thing is, what it comes down to is, it comes down to the old strategy of divide and conquer. That's what you do. You divide and conquer, and that's how you win. And that's what the left is doing. They're dividing their opposition. They're dividing America. They're dividing everybody through racial divisions, through class divisions, through lifestyle division. Any division they can say it again.
Gender
division, or sure, every division that they can. Well, because if we are against each other and we are fighting, then they have to come in to resolve it, and they have to do it by being more statist. And I think that the way to sum that all up is to go back to a quote from the fine Mr. Benjamin Franklin. Only a virtuous people are capable of freedom. Listen to the next part very carefully. As nations become corrupt and vicious, they have more need of masters. When we come back, we have the book of the week by Alex, the Constitution Quest question of the week, and 3 more things to talk about that happened this week. So, my friends, don't go anywhere.
Check us out online at KMET1490am.com.
What's your constitutional IQ? Your quest to learn the Constitution can be fun for the whole family. Learn about the Constitution as you play the Constitution Quest board game. Learn more at constitutionquest.com.
Not sure if you're ready to own a dog but wouldn't mind a test drive? Second Chances Rescue is looking for fosters. By committing to care for a puppy or dog, you can enjoy their companionship without the expense. At Second Chances Rescue, located in Norco, we pay for all vet bills, food, bed, collar, leash, unless you want to have the tax benefit by donating these items. We're providing second chances to Greater Los Angeles and Inland Empire area puppies and dogs to find new homes since 2012. Visit our facility and foster or adopt a dog today. Check out our website, secondchances.rescueme.org, or go to facebook.com/secondchancesrescue, or call us at 909-631-9682. That's 909-631-9682.
You got a dent in your door, a scratch in your fender, or a scratch in your door and a dent in your fender. If you need auto detailing, if you need fire shooting decals on the side of your car, if you need a rally stripe right down the middle of your hardtop, I don't care what it is. The Patriots at All-Star Collision are the place you want to go. They're the only place to go. 522 Railroad Street in Corona. Web address allstarci.com to see all that they do and what they're all about. Phone number 951-279-9161. All-Star Collision, the kings of wreck and roll.
The spirit of Paul Revere is alive and well and broadcasting on KMET AM 1490. Constitutionalist Douglas V. Gibbs hosts a roundtable of local citizens through local, state, and national issues every Saturday at 8 a.m. Thomas Jefferson said, "We in America do not have government by the majority. We have government by the majority who participate." So, participate. Listen to Conservative Voice Radio every Saturday at 8 a.m. and join Paul Revere's modern ride for liberty.
And welcome back, Constitution Radio with Douglas V. Gibbs right here on KMET 1490 AM. Worldwide at KMET1490am.com. All right, now we have a segment we have every week called the Book of the Week, and going to turn off that echo for me if you could, engineer. We've got Alex here with the Common Sense of Thomas Paine, the Elementary Common Sense of Thomas Paine by Mark Walensky. I gave him this project a week ago, and did you enjoy it? Did you learn something from it?
I spent many hours with this Mr. Walensky and Mr. Paine, and again, it's time well spent. When I recommend these books, I mean seriously, this is good for you.
So tell us a little bit about the book and what you learned from it.
Okay, one of the things that I learned, or at least I think I learned, is that Thomas Paine wasn't that good a writer. He was sort of pedestrian. He was a debater. It wasn't that he was saying things so well, it was that he was saying things that people had not heard before. And he made his case beautifully. So it's the beauty of his logic rather than the beauty of his prose that one goes to this book for. Now, I find there's a problem. You know, the original Common Sense is only 46 pages long, and Mr. Walensky had to fill a whole book, so he's got 192 pages, which is fine because the stuff he's got in there is very valuable. He's got lessons for school children. He's got other documents that are very important, like the Quartering Act and the Boston Port Act and all this sort of thing. He fills up the book with real good stuff. Some of it, obviously, for young students. But to get to the issue itself, the reason he was writing this Common Sense was because he ran into Ben Franklin in England. Paine was an Englishman who had had a lot of bad luck, and Franklin somehow recognized his talent and gave him letters of recommendation, so that when he got to America, he was in good shape to write for various publications. Paine, to get right into it, Paine railed against hereditary titles. He recognized that the people, even though the fighting had already started, the people of America, angry at Parliament, angry at Lord North, the Prime Minister, they still loved their King George.
They went into this as Englishmen who wanted to be treated right, not as those seeking independence.
They were loyal to the king, and it was up to Thomas Paine to show that the whole idea of a king is wrong. One of his wonderful quotes was that we occasionally trade. Here it is. Nature does give us an ass for a lion frequently. In other words, you got a hereditary monarch. You got a kid who's born dumb, or his parents die when he's only 5 years old. It just doesn't make any sense at all. To go on with the argument, he's saying that a colony is a little tiny island in the ocean run by a big country that can protect it. He says the reverse is true. That what's going on with the American situation is a reversal of nature. You got this huge continent being run by a little tiny island, and everybody says, oh, they've got such a great military advantage. He says, look, they spent a fortune on their ships. Most of their ships are not even serviceable. We've got all the wood and all the hemp and all the materials, flax and such, to build a navy that can fight them. They have to. He says he thinks God put the Atlantic Ocean between us, so that England would have, and the other European powers would have to traverse that 3,000-mile distance in order to attack.
Okay, Alex, now in the interest of time, I want to ask you a question here, and I want you to answer it as thoroughly as you can based on what you learned. how does what you learned from this book apply to today's politics?
It's exactly what I was driving at. He says that the British government was too complicated. And the American system was itself too big. So the government was too complicated. It's supposed to have checks and balances and doesn't. The Parliament did not check the king. It was ridiculous to think that this little tiny country 3,000 miles away could run the day-to-day life of a continent. And we are in much the same position today because of the usurpation of powers. We don't have checks and balances in America the way we used to. We were just talking on that internet show about how the courts tell the Obama administration that they can't continue the immigration program, and the Obama administration ignores them as if they hadn't said anything at all.
The Obama White House ignores Congress, ignores the courts, ignores the people, ignores the rule of law, and they use a mercantilist fashion of doing things. In other words, picking winners and losers in the economy. Solyndra is a great example. That's the same stuff that Britain was doing. So basically, this government under Obama has become what we fought a revolution against. Right, Jasmius?
Yeah, complexity is the enemy of transparency and is the tool of tyranny. The more complex, the bigger that a government gets, the more difficult it becomes to understand it, the more invisible it becomes, and it's more and more difficult for the people to govern themselves. And then they fall under the sway of elites, as the term has been coined, that feel perfectly entitled to run our lives for us and feel perfectly entitled to raise themselves above the law.
That goes back to Constitution Corner, which I went over on American Daily Review Radio earlier, blogtalkradio.com/American Daily Review, where the Constitution gives the executive, the president, the duty to faithfully execute the laws of the United States. Faithfully execute. He believes he's above the law. He doesn't care about the law. He's going to pick and choose, and that's what he's been doing when it comes to immigration law.
Here's a quote from Thomas Paine on that. He says, "In absolute governments, the king is law. In America, the law is king." He says that we have a natural right to govern ourselves. But I'm saying we've got a government now where this Democratic Party, since the Progressive Party collapsed in 1950 or so, the Marxists have been flooding into the Democratic Party, and because the way they operate, rather than taking part, they took over, and we've got a government that doesn't believe in one man, one vote. They don't believe in a system of checks and balances. They believe that they know best, and that the thing to do is, as quickly as possible, make sure that we know that they know best.
Well, that's like you said earlier, Alex, on American Daily Review. They don't govern, they rule.
They don't govern, they rule, and they rule in the way they want to rule. And that kind of brings to mind one of the stories I want to talk about on today's radio program. The Republicans passing legislation to make sure that Congress can review and possibly reject any final deal with Iran that the president signs. Well, wait a second, that's already in the Constitution. Why do they have to pass a piece of legislation to make sure the Constitution is being followed? To make sure that Congress still has say when it comes to the executive actions?
Because they wanted to overturn the Senate's Article 2, Section 2, Clause 2 ratification power. That, of course, Article 2, Section 2, Clause 2 indicates that the president cannot make foreign treaties and have them just automatically become law. They had to be submitted to the Senate, which used to represent the states.
States' voice. That's important. That's very important, because the states then, when they reviewed these treaties, it was about what was best for the states, not some ideological reason, right?
Right. And the Senate, 2/3 of the states' representatives in the United States Senate, prior to the 17th Amendment, have to approve that by a two-thirds or more, 67 or more senators in the Senate have to vote yes in order for whatever treaty the president negotiates to become the law of the land, to have the force of law. What this bill in the Senate this week, the Corker-Menendez bill, it claims to give Congress a say in whatever Iran deal Barack Obama ends up negotiating. What it really does is it flips Article 2, Section 2, Clause 2 on its head. Because according to the details of this bill, the Corker-Menendez bill, if let's just back up. Let's say Barack Obama reaches an agreement before June 30th on a nuclear deal with Iran. Then Barack Obama submits that deal to the Senate. The Senate then has 30 to 60 days to either reject it with a two-thirds or more majority in order to be able to override the inevitable Obama veto, or it becomes law automatically. So it's been flipped on its head. Now Barack Obama doesn't have to get two-thirds or Senate support to ratify his treaty. His treaty is already ratified in the Senate. Opponents of this bill in the Senate have to get two-thirds or more to overturn it.
Yeah. Can this bill trump a stipulation in the Constitution?
Well, it shouldn't. No, it's unlawful. That's the point. Now, that brings us to the Constitution Quest question of the week. ConstitutionQuest.com, it totally ties into what we're talking about. Listen carefully. The framers of the Constitution included a system that granted powers to both the individual states and the central government. In other words, it is a partnership, working together. What's it called? The A, Great Compromise, B, United Powers, or C, Federalism? What do you think, Sean?
Well, Doug, I'm not sure.
I had a feeling you wouldn't be. What do you think,
I think it's federalism.
Think it's federalism? What do you think?
Yeah, C, federalism.
C, federalism. That's absolutely. We don't have a national government. We have a federal government. Federalism. Federal government is not all-powerful like a national government, but yet the word national sure gets thrown around a lot in our system, doesn't it?
Well, and by the way, that Corker-Menendez bill, it passed 98-1.
Wow.
And
it's something that on the surface looks good, but you look deep into the devil's in the details.
Well, and of course, the Republican leadership strong-armed it through. It was going to be Corker-Menendez amended or nothing. By the way, the one Republican who voted against it was Tom Cotton of Arkansas, just for the record.
Yeah, he's one of my heroes. All right, next story before we run out of time, so we're rapidly running out of time. Obama Doctrine, encourage worldwide strife. Game over. 150 House Dems have what?
Yeah, we just talked about that.
Yeah, and then we got the Obama's anti-Iran ICBM shield.
Oh yeah. Now he is supposedly, purportedly re-engaging with Saudi Arabia and the Gulf Sheikdoms and Emirates about a short-range missile shield. Now, if you recall, 6 years ago, we had an ICBM missile defense shield. Those installations in the Czech Republic and Poland that Barack Obama pulled the plug on as part of his reset outreach to Vladimir Putin. Well, now all of a sudden he's being forced, kicking and screaming, to re-engage with the countries who think quite frankly that he's sold out and is now an ally of the Iranian mullahs. I think the reason they're doing this is because Barack Obama does not want the Saudis to get nuclear weapons. He wants the Iranians to have as much of a regional nuclear weapons monopoly as he possibly can.
Yeah, I think you have a point there. All right, we have.
Well, may I point out?
We have,
by the way,
barely more than a minute left. So make it fast.
Well, when he canceled that missile protection program for Czechoslovakia and Poland, he did it on the exact anniversary to the day when Russia invaded Poland in World War II.
All right, final thoughts here now. Final thoughts. Also, last Thursday was the National Day of Prayer. You should be praying all the time. You shouldn't need a National Day of Prayer, but that was the National Day of Prayer. And don't forget that Mother's Day is tomorrow, and our Nuts and Nugget, it's a nugget. We're going to go back to our good friend, Mr. Evan Sayed. My favorite drawings at the Muhammad Cartoon Festival in Texas were the two chalk outlines out front. Plug yourself.
blogtalkradio.com/HSR Network. I host the Hard Starboard Radio Network podcast Monday through Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific. I write at politicalpistachio.com. And please listen to and subscribe to our news YouTube channels, youtube.com/hardstarboardradio, youtube.com/American Daily Review 2.
Make it fast.
ConservativeCannonade.org is the place to go for conservative thought that is cutting edge.
And, of course, politicalpistachio.com. Thanks for listening. God bless America, my friends. God bless you. And never forget, united we stand, combined we kick butt. We'll see you next week.
Smart Talk 1490, KMET, Banning, Beaumont, Redlands, 1490 AM on your radio and online at KMET1490am.com.
From ABC News, I'm Daria Albinger. If you live in the nation's midsection, you know tornado watches are common, but when they cover almost an entire state, well, that's another story, and that's what's happening in Oklahoma, with more severe storms on the way, on top of more than 50 twisters, which have pounded the Midwest in recent days. ABC News senior meteorologist Rob Marciano.
A big problem here in Oklahoma City is that the damage that was done earlier this week has been difficult to clean up and recover from because we just keep getting storm after storm, day after day. We've had severe weather every day with torrential rains, hail, and big-time winds.
There are also watches in parts of Texas, Kansas, and Colorado. The first named storm of the Atlantic hurricane season is spinning toward the Carolina coast. Ana is expected to bring wind and dangerous surf, but not so much rain.
Ana is relatively dry as far as tropical cyclones go. We're really only expecting 1 to 3 inches widespread. There may be a few spotty areas that get amounts up to about 5 inches, but it's not going to be a major rainmaker.
Meteorologist James Franklin at the National Hurricane Center. Some of them are running for president. Some could get into the race. They headed to South Carolina today to talk about issues they feel are important to conservatives, like gun rights.
I don't know about you, but in our states, we think of gun control. We think that means hitting your target that you're aiming at.
Louisiana Governor Bobby Jindal at today's Freedom Summit. It's been 42 days since an Ebola case has been diagnosed in Liberia, and today the West African nation reached a benchmark in the battle against the deadly disease.
Well, today we can say for the first time in a year that Liberia is free of Ebola.
Dr. Bruce Aylward with the World Health Organization says at the height of the outbreak, Liberia had up to 400 new cases a week. Numbers are also dropping in Sierra Leone and Guinea. You're listening to ABC.